Do you remember a couple of weeks ago when I said that parenting well in 2025 was a radical act? And then I posted a video where I talked about the authoritarian personality, which is a piece of research that came out in 1950 that sought to analyze what kind of people fall for Yahtzees, what kind of people fall for fascism, what kind of people are susceptible to authoritarian strongmen. And do you know what they found? After surveying and interviewing more than 2,000 people, they found that the way that those folks were parented and the ideas that they have about children and parents, about how much authority plays into the relationship between children and parents, that is what is the largest single indicating factor as to whether somebody is susceptible to falling for authoritarianism or not. People who believed that obedience was more important than independence, that good manners were more important than children exploring their own free will, that how children behaved was more important than what children thought. Those folks who were raised like that, very much the American evangelical and also Mormon kind of first-time obedience, blanket training your kids. High priority for children are subservient to adults and children must obey adults. Those kind of people are much more susceptible to fall for authoritarianism. Adults who believe very much that children should be punished for behaviors, often very normal childlike behaviors, are far more likely to be the kind of people who think that immigrants deserve to be sent to the torture gulag in El Salvador simply because they are in this country without being U.S. citizens. I even had somebody in my comments yesterday on YouTube tell me that all of the brown people being picked up by ICE and deported, they all deserve it because they're here illegally. And when I brought up the fact that some of those people are American citizens, but also some of them are people here legally with green cards. There was also a young gentleman who was arrested by ICE when he showed up for his U.S. citizenship hearing. He was doing all of the correct legal things and was on the pathway to becoming a U.S. citizen. And also when I pointed out that if you want to request asylum in the United States, you must enter the country first. He didn't care about any of those things, that he was very sure that every single person that has been rounded up by ICE has been put either in a torture facility in another country or is being kept in a concentration camp, a warehouse, a facility here in the United States. Facility is like way too neutral of a term for these deportation centers, these prisons we're keeping people in. I don't want to get off on a tangent too much, but there's something like 6,000 children being kept in these prisons in the southern United States. So the question at the end of my video about the authoritarian personality was like, how do we get out of this? If so many people are raising their children to believe like this, and so many people believe that dehumanizing children is okay, that what matters is not that we are raising independent thinkers, but what matters is that we are raising quiet, compliant, obedient children. And it's okay to use shame and humiliation, coercion, physical force to get children to be obedient, right? Like once you see the connection between how we parent children and how people become pro-authoritarian, you can't unsee that connection. And this is why I say parenting well in 2025 America is a radical act. To treat your children with dignity and humanity and to give your children the freedom to become who they are as people, to raise them in a way where they get to hone their own good judgment, develop critical thinking skills, make their own decisions, and they are raised free of shame and coercion. That is a radical, radical thing in the United States. Now, I've talked about this before, and I could get into it more if people are interested, but we don't raise our children with punishment. I am a non-authoritarian parent. I don't expect obedience from my children, and I've talked about that in the past. My children are human beings. Everybody's children are human beings. They're not property. They're not little automatons, and they have their own will, their own interests, and their little brains and bodies are growing and developing at a rapid pace. I know I've said this before, but understanding child development is a huge, huge gift to your children. Taking the time to learn child development and understand kids' cognitive and physical limitations at different ages, understanding how kids' brains work at different ages, super, super important to raising children with respect and dignity in a way that helps you set appropriate expectations and in a way that helps you raise your children without shame and judgment. Speaking of, I had the best FYP poll last night. I opened TikTok and this was the second or third video I saw when I was scrolling, and I absolutely loved it. So I want to share a little bit of it with you because I think it so perfectly illustrates my point of what kind of good parenting we need, what it looks like to be a parent who has a good perspective, who is thinking about how to treat her child in a way that honors her child and understands her kid's development. Okay, hang on a second.
I could be mad at this, but honestly, her letters are getting really good. Definitely did this in the wrong area, but all in all, this G was really hard for her. She never could do a K. That K is solid. And if I'm not mistaken, she put these checks here to show like I did a good job. And another one, good job on that M. I think it was the whole alphabet, but all I see is LMNO, EFG. But I think I just need to get her an easel, big poster board, take away Sharpies out of the whole house. But other from that, bravo.
I can't tell you how much I loved this whole video. She's not mad at her kid. She's like, this is a very normal thing that children do. I know I wrote on the wall with crayon when I was a little kid. This is not something we need to freak out about. This is not a child being disobedient. This is a child being like, look, here's a blank canvas. It's just begging for me to decorate it. It's so developmentally normal for little kids to want to write their name or the alphabet on blank surfaces. They're not being naughty or disobedient. It's just very normal childlike behavior. And instead of getting angry, she's like, okay, how do I help my child who clearly wants to draw, clearly wants to write, clearly wants to do that on an upright surface? I should get her an easel and a big piece of, butcher paper, poster paper. She has an inclination to do this. Okay, how can I help her? Like, look, she's working on her letters. She's learning how to write. How can I foster that? I don't need to get mad at her in this situation. I just need to redirect her to a more appropriate place to be doing this. There's no need to be angry. There's no punishment that has to come into play. Now, if she doesn't want to leave that up on the wall, I personally would be like, that's some freaking great artwork. I would probably leave that if that was my house. But if she doesn't want to leave it, then she can ask her child, hey, we're going to clean this off together. This is a job we're both going to do. Really great writing. Glad to see you want to practice your letters, but this is not the right place for it. No shame, no judgment, but we need to clean up our mess now that we've made it. So let me show you. This is how you get crayon or Sharpie or whatever off of a wall. And now we're going to clean it together. I'm not mad at you. I'm not upset with you, but we clean up our messes. And if you want to keep doing some writing and you want to do it on the wall, let me tape a big piece of butcher paper to the wall, or let me get you an easel with a poster board. Which one would you prefer? Oh, you'd rather have the easel with the poster board? Okay, cool. Let's do that. Because dang, your G's and your J's and your M's, they were so good over here. Let's do that on the poster board instead. Keep that up, but let's learn the appropriate place to do it. Like that's all there is to parenting. And I think in the US in 2025, just that little interplay, that would be pretty radical in some in a lot of circles. Nobody needs to get mad. Nobody needs to get their undies in a bunch. Nobody needs to be yelling. There doesn't need to be any anger or judgment or shame or ridicule. There definitely doesn't need to be any physical harm done to the child. That's very developmentally normal. That's what kids do when they are in preschool and they have something to write on and something to write with. Nobody needs to be upset. We just need to clean it up and we need to move on. How simple it is to parent that way once you've been shown the ropes. But I think for so many people in America, it's not intuitive. Most of us were not raised that way. I was not raised that way. I had to learn how to parent like that. And a lot of my parenting was just do the opposite of what was done to me. And how do I treat my children with dignity? How do I treat my children like they're human beings? How do I treat my children like I would want to be treated if I was a small, powerless person? I think if we want to help pull America back from the brink of authoritarianism, that parenting well is a key component, helping people learn good parenting skills. I wish we taught them in school. I wish we taught good parenting. But also, for a lot of us who were not raised that way, it does not come naturally. It is a learned skill, and we have got to help people get access to those skills. And to learn how to do differently by their children than what was done to them. We have to be cycle breakers. And I'm so encouraged by folks like that mom in that video to know that there are many, many people all over America who are committed to being just that, cycle breakers. And that gives me a lot of hope for the future.